Yeah, but were you, do you know when, because obviously we're the same age, right? Did you have any aspirations of going to like BIT? Was it BIT back then or not?
Yes, I remember BIT, of course, Berkeley too. I mean, I grew up in a small town in the northwest corner of Montana, and that scene was so far away from anything that I ever imagined that I could be a part of.
Yeah.
And I got into a band. So I had a best friend who was 2 years older than I was. We played rock music. And so then my whole thing was just about this guy and I were going to move to a city and we're going to, you know, be in a rock band together. And we actually did that. Amazing. And I'm still friends with this guy. His name's David Young. We were in a rock band together for a lot of years. But I always had this dream of like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to go to school for bass. It just seemed... Yeah. It seemed impossible because I was so far away from, and there was no one in my zone that was doing it also. So it just seemed like, oh, I'm not, people from my town maybe don't go to Berkeley. They don't go to BIT.
Got it. Yeah.
It seemed like the moon. It may as well have been the moon.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So did you just bypass that completely? Was it like, oh, I just can't go to music school? Or was there ever a point when you were around sort of like late teens, early 20s where you were like, oh, actually, I'm going to investigate it some more?
Well, I by the time I was college age, I went to college, but I didn't go for music.
What did you do?
Because I did communications and political science. I studied for a semester in Edinburgh, too, which was so fun.
Get out. You were in Edinburgh?
Yeah, man. I was at the university. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have family in Kilmarnock, south of Glasgow.
Oh, you are Kilmarnock. I've got I've got two connections there. In Kilmarnock, I bought a dog one time. And in Edinburgh, I accidentally peed on a police officer's leg once. So
that's proper Scott.
Yeah,
man.
there's like various things.
Scotland.
There's various things that I've done in Edinburgh. The Edinburgh Fringe and all of that. But yeah, just one time. If there's just one memory that I hold above everything else, is that one time that I accidentally peed on a policeman's leg.
That's crazy.
You know what? And he wasn't too bothered about it. I was just, as it happened, I was like, oh, I really, really messed up here. And but it turned out he was a friendly guy, and he didn't mind me. He understood. I was like, 18, way too much booze. I probably couldn't see.
Yeah.
It was good time.
Oh man.
Anyway, so you're doing like political sciences or whatever in college, right?
I had this thought. I was already in this rock band, and we were going to take over the world. I was so tunnel visioned in that regard. And I thought, I'm already doing the music thing that I want to be doing. And I had a fear that what if I weren't good enough to make it my career? I better have a backup plan.
Got it.
So college for me was a backup plan. But it was wonderful. I met a lot of great people. I learned to write. I felt like it helped me discover aspects of myself that weren't just about music.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I was like, if I go to music school, that's all I will have. And in retrospect, I feel like I should have maybe just doubled down and been like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I had a fear of like, but what if I'm not good enough? It's that self-doubt. Yeah. I mean, what about you? I mean, everybody knows that you didn't go to music school, famously didn't go, right?
Not from lack of trying. They just wouldn't let me in.
But then you figured out, you studied with Willis, you figured out you forged your own path.
Yeah, I definitely would have gone to music school if I could have. If I could.
You wanted to.
I really wanted to. I'm just trying to think back then.
Yeah.
But just for context, I didn't want to do that when I was a kid because I didn't really understand. Same as you. I just, people in my town did not do that. It was like being a professional musician. It was like, well, I didn't even know what that was because nobody was a professional musician. So you don't know what you don't know. So I was in a band, or bands playing stuff. I was playing guitar at the time, doing that whole thing. Having a scream doing that, playing around bars and pubs and stuff, and then was just doing terribly in school. Just had a rough time. I had a really rough time at school. Just some bad shit happened at school in terms of like my best friend died of a brain hemorrhage, basically, when I was right in the midst of that. Do you know that sort of like when you're right in the middle of your sort of like puberty and you're just emotionally all over the place, and that happened.
Of course.
And it just sent me sideways and just ended up getting into real bad, like my life could have gone down a totally different path. Yeah. Like, a lot of kind of just, but as you imagine, like if you're when you're a teenager, you can go down a bad path. And I was definitely going down that path, hanging around with a lot of the wrong people and doing terribly in school. And just, I was playing guitar. I'd always enjoyed the idea of, woodwork and kind of like, I dug that kind of thing at school. And in the local newspaper, there was an advert for an apprenticeship bass maker. And I was like, well, that's like, I'm doing terribly at school. My life is kind of just like going off the rails.
And were you playing bass at that point, or were you playing guitar?
Not at all. Just playing guitar. Yeah.
Not at all?
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah,
I'd never even touched a bass in my life. A bass
Incredible.
Is like, the thing with 4 strings,
Where you're like looking down, you're like, it's not a guitar, but I guess it's a start.
Exactly. It's that thing that all of the people that can't play guitar, they play bass, right? And
it's all the ugly dudes. They have to go play the bass.
Exactly that, right? So, but I went for this. I was so desperate to have any kind of I didn't have any direction, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, school was just like a nightmare, and I was just getting into all kinds of trouble left, right, and center. And I was, kind of, it wasn't a conscious thing. I was subconsciously looking for some kind of direction. Anyway, saw this advert for an apprentice bass maker. It was £26 a week. That was the pay. So just to put this in context, that's like, that's about $35 a week. That was my a week, and that was my wage for about a year.
How old were you?
16. I was like, oh no, maybe 17 or something like that. 16.
But did that feel, even though, I mean, it's a crazy low figure, did it feel amazing?
It felt like amazing.
That you were getting.
When I got that job, when I got that gig, I was like, I'd won the lottery. That 26.
Yes.
I was rolling in that £26, man. I was so over the moon, and I was desperate. And the guy that was advertising the job was, and we're going to be talking about endorsements right later in this episode.
Yeah.
But the guy was the owner of Overwater Basses. So, and that was my introduction to bass. And so I started working at this place. I left school. I'd moved out of home as well. Really, I moved out of home when I was just 17 as well. So I was just like, fun times. Oh, well, moving out of home. I definitely shouldn't have done that, but never mind. Anyway, so it's, when you get a little older, you understand, damn, I should have stayed at home. But anyway, moved out of home really early. But it was just a great period of my life when I got that job. He was just playing like loads of Weather Report and stuff. He was just a big Weather Report fan and was playing all of this fusion stuff like Alan Holdsworth.
Like in the shop?
In the shop when we were, when I was learning to make basses. And
so you're around. There's the wood chips are flying, the sawdust. You're listening to Alan Holdsworth.
Exactly.
You're listening to Weather Report. Dude. It's like smelling the wood. I mean, it's just seeping. The jazz is seeping into you. Yeah, right.
Absolutely. And then I heard this solo. I heard this solo on an Alan Holdsworth album. The track's called Low Level High Stakes. I was like, what is that? And just before that, I had realized, I'd been very conscious. I was like, all of this cool music I'm listening to at the minute, there's no guitar in it. That's weird. And I'd never really listened to any music without any guitar in. All I'd listened to is like Van Halen and
like rock.
Yeah,
sure, and grunge and the stuff.
Like
right?
Nirvana and Soundgarden and all of these bands, and even back into sort of like the 80s, like Whitesnake and
were you into hair metal? Did you like that stuff? Whitesnake and
kind of sort of like Whitesnake. I was definitely more kind of sort of like Vi. So Whitesnake introduced me to Vi, and then through Vi found like Satriani, and so I was into all of that kind of thing, right? So this was the first music I'd listened to with no guitar. So I think I kind of gravitated towards the stringed instrument on the stuff that I was listening to, and then heard that solo, and I was like, oh, maybe I want to try playing a bass. And Chris, who ran the company, he just gave me an old status and said, hey, take it home and, play it.
Oh, so sick.
So I just played slap bass for a week.
Were you excited about like Mark King? Were you like a level 42 guy?
I'd never heard level 42.
Did that come later?
I've never heard of level 42 at that point. It was just,
yeah.
And then the rest is history, right? Just sort of like picked it up and got into bass, and then ended up sort of like never really played it in a band, actually. I did my first pro gig as a bass player before I'd played bass in a band. Like a guy came into the shop and he was playing in a local theater in the pits. And he had a medical condition, and he was looking for a sub in that area. And Chris, who ran the shop, was like, "Oh yeah, Scott will be able to do it." I was like, "Dude, I've never played bass in a band, but I knew enough just to keep my mouth shut, see a great opportunity, and just be like, I'm just gonna go for it." So I just went for it.
Good
and
for
that
you.
Was like a trial.
So your first gig was in a pit orchestra?
Yeah.
Your first gig?
It was a small band. It was like a 7-piece or something like that. But it was like in the pit for a theater.
But playing for a show.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Could you read?
No.
Or did you? How did you learn that music?
Oh man, it was brutal. I took 2 weeks off work.
Yeah.
And then I got all of the charts, and there was a lot of them. I'm talking maybe like 150 charts or something like that.
Oh my
150 charts. And I got up, I had my coffee in the morning, had my breakfast. And then from 9 o'clock till like 7 or 8 every day, I just sat and learned that stuff. And it's impossible to learn 150 charts. So I just wrote as many notes on the actual notation that I could, that I could get down, learned as much as I could, and just did that for a couple of weeks, and then went and did it. And they didn't have any other choice. They had to take me. That was that honestly, like that. I think I just scraped through by the seat of my pants.
The kid shows up and they're like,
totally. Right? I was on the gig. I'd never used a proper bass amp. I can remember like plugging into the bass amp and like playing and thinking, is this a good sound? I didn't know.
Right. Like you had no idea.
I had no idea. Yeah.
Well, okay, but hold on a minute, because the thing that I'm interested in about this story is what made you do that amount of work to get prepped for that, because that is not at this point you're 17 maybe.
I'm like 18 at this point. 18.
You're 18. It is not typical 18-year-old behavior to get 150 charts, take 2 weeks off of work, and prepare for a gig. That comes from somewhere. I want to know where that came from.
Desperation. I just
to be involved in something.
Yeah.
You wanted to play a gig.
It was that, okay, like a few things. I guess a few things. So first of all, I'd been working for a couple of years at this point. So maybe I was 19 actually. I'd been working for a couple of years as a luthier making basses. And although I definitely fantasized about, working, doing woodwork and stuff like that whole thing. As it turned out.
This is Scott with the ponytail too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen those photos.
I was just pretty shit. I was just pretty shit at it. I just didn't have I was working with somebody that had really fantastic woodworking capabilities, and I just didn't have that. I could do it, but I definitely didn't have that. And it was definitely, if anybody's listening to this podcast and they're thinking, oh yeah, making basses, it's romantic. It was hard work. It was
hard work.
Man, it was brutal. It was like when somebody gives you when you have to sand a bass for a day, and dude, like you can feel
I can't even imagine
skin wearing off. Like I'm just like, it's brutal. It was not the best. Yeah, like it was a great experience, and absolutely, like Chris, who still runs that company, he had a huge, to say a huge effect on the direction of my life would be an understatement. Drastic. It would. Yeah. He, in terms of the direction that I was going in, it was he's like, you know, in the top 3 of shaping where the direction of my life. So it was just, I met the right guy, you know, right point at the right time in my life. But he actually, I think that he was also looking for where to push me. I think that he knew that I was kind of floating around a little bit, and I wasn't, you know, sure whether that was the direction that I wanted to go in. He could see that I was a talented, you know, player, even though I had 0 experience, and he was just like, yeah, go do that. I think that he saw an opportunity there for me. Now, in terms of just putting the work in, I'm just like really OCD. I think that honestly comes from that, in terms of actually sitting there from sort of like 9 till 7 every day, practicing stuff. I'm just really OCD. That's kind of just sort of like inbuilt with whatever I do. So I joked with Phil the other day. Was it Phil that I was joking with? And I said, it's a good job that I found SBL, because it gives me something to plug in the kind of crazy OCD part of my personality, because if I'm left to my own devices, man, I'm dangerous. That could go anywhere. I might end up some crazy criminal.
That energy.
Yeah, it's just...
it's got to go somewhere.
It's got to go somewhere, yeah. And it just happened. Yeah. I could direct it to that, and then, yeah. So that's where that drive came from. It is drive. I would say that I'd like to be like, yeah, I've got this insane discipline and all of that, but it actually comes from this kind of crazy OCD place inbuilt.
Yes.
My brother's got it. My dad's got it. It's just sort of in the genes. Yeah, my dad, if he's like into something, it's crazy. It's crazy, like unhealthy. You know, my brother's the same.
Right.
My brother's sort of...
becomes an obsession.
It becomes an obsession, yeah. So, yeah.
Yes. That's the divine family trait.
It is,
right?
It is. And man, I'm really glad. Like, it does come with its downside, but it's really great as well. Like, it comes.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes learning stuff, when it's pointed at the right thing, it makes it easy, because you just obsess about it.
Yeah, until you get it.
Yeah, until you get it. Yeah.
Reminds me of that great story of Victor Wooten, who said, you know, he never talked about like practicing a ton. Like he talked about, he would just do these things where he'd find something and he had to get through it before he even put down the bass. So that great story of him learning Portrait of Tracy through, he didn't sleep. He heard the record at 7 p.m. or whatever. And then by 7 a.m., he knew everything he's known now about harmonics. Yeah. Came from, learning that tune. And it's just that like laser focus into something. That's pretty cool. I don't have that.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it?
More of that.
Like, do you stay up? I can't remember what gave me this kind of, it was something that happened recently. Like, do you stay up really late at night playing the bass?
I do, but it's more.
I can't remember why, but I just, maybe it was on Instagram or something like that. Maybe you did a story, and I was like, "Dude,
you're like, what time is it?
Why are you awake playing the bass? It's 2 a.m. in Minneapolis. What are you doing?"
I mean, you might have, I don't know if you have this same thing, but like when my family goes to bed and everyone's asleep and then I'm the only one awake in the house, it's like, I'm like, oh, this is my time. And so for me, I would love to say, and the practice regimen comes out and I'm writing great bass lines. And that's when I get all my, but really what it is it's almost a relax. It's like, it's an unplug state. And I feel the most comfortable and the most relaxed and the most on vacation with the instrument in my hands. Yeah. I love playing the bass, and not necessarily just practice. I'm not saying like I love doing all of the hard work all the time. If I did, I'd know all my, melodic and harmonic minor modes, like, 3 octaves. And I'm more of like, I like the feeling of playing a groove. I could sit there with a bass, watching a YouTube video and, with snacks and beverages close at hand and go a boom, boom, a boom, boom, a boom, boom. A boom, boom, all night long, man. Yeah. Like it's comfort zone for me. So when I'm up late with a bass, it's not like the woodshed. I'm not in the shed. I'm at the pool.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something the other day, a couple of weeks ago, didn't you? And like about reframing practice and how people actually feel from an emotional point of view about practice. Because some people definitely feel sort of like it's hard. It's this hard work thing, and you just flipped it on its head, and you were like, nah, man, like it's self-care. Like this is like time with your instrument is self-care. And that sounds exactly like what you were talking about right then.
I mean, I'm at night, I'm more in the kind of like this. I'm not spending like necessarily quality time learning something new. I'm doing well-worn things. I'm just having a nice experience with the instrument. I think that's okay too, but it's certainly not practice. I mean, I'll preach something a little different if someone asks me about practice, but I really do think that all the time that you can spend with the instrument is great. And I do think it's about self-care. I do think it's about saying, let's set up this area to make it nice, to make it feel nice to be in. I mean, I have just this little spare bedroom where I do all my content, all my recording from home, but I love it. I love coming in here. Got the basses set up in a certain way. I've got my desk, got the lighting.
The carpet,
right?
Dude, the carpet. I've got super...
Yeah, I got a nice rug.
Yeah, you got the rug,
yeah, you know, and then when I come in here, it feels like, and sometimes I feel like really, you know, digging in and doing the exercises and doing the hard work. But also, like, I just like being around the instrument. I mean, I have a bass in my hands. I mean, if you could ask my family, my wife, she's like, you cannot walk by a bass and not pick it up.
Yeah.
It's so
interesting.
true.
I think it's really
there's one in the room,
isn't it? I think it's really great to be like that. So. Like one thing that I'm always telling people is like, don't put your bass away. Don't put it in a case because that friction, it needs to be out. It needs to be just so you can grab it. Like I've got like, obviously this is a little studio in the garden, but in the house, I've got like a bass in the house. I've got an amp in the house. I've got like, I've got the kids a little bass. You know, we were looking to buy the kids like a little keyboard the other day. And the first thing I said to Lisa, I was like, they need to be able to pick it up. We can't get this big static thing. I was like, they need to be able to pick it up and walk around and just, if they want to sit on the sofa and just play, they need to be able to do that. If they want to take it into their room, I think it's these little weird things. It's the devil's in the detail, isn't it?
Yes. Have you ever, check this out. Have you ever seen the pocket operators that Teenage Engineering makes?
No, what is it?
They're incredible. This one has like video game sounds inside of it. Oh, and now it's maybe the batteries are dead. I think the batteries died in it.
What's it for? If anybody's listening to this, it looks like a calculator.
Yeah, they're like little drum machines, and they're unbelievable. And they're a bunch of different ones. So there's ones that are synths, there's ones that are drum machines, and I have another one downstairs that the batteries are working that my daughter grabs and plays with all the time. And she just finds these cool drum sounds and goes, you know, on this little thing and carry it around, and it's incredible. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I agree. Like having something that is fun that you can move around with, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Just keep the basses out. Keep the basses out. If anybody's listening to this, by the way, and you're just thinking like, where's this podcast going? It's going to endorsements, but we haven't. Ian and I haven't spoken for 2 weeks, so we're just catching up with you guys.
I know, man. It's really fun. I mean, and you know me, I can get going on anything. Yeah. So if we want to rein it in and talk about endorsements, we can do.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. And just in case anybody's listening to the come on, if nobody's listening, nobody. Just bushweed. Is that what they're called?
The tumbleweed.
The tumbleweed. That's it. Yeah.
But dude, like I just need to learn this slang, man. I mean, that's something too. You said in Slack the other day, you said that's the badger. That's the badger. Like, what the hell does that mean? And I looked it up, dude. I Googled it, you know, and it said if someone from England tells you that's the badger, it means you're on the right track.
That's
so
it,
I said, well, all right.
Do you know what, when you said that, it made me want to kind of like unearth all of these crazy kind of sort of like colloquial.
Dude, I want it.
I'm going to bring it out.
I mean, I want it. So
I sent you a bunch of terms after that, didn't I? I was like,
you did.
Found a page on Google, and I was like, check. There's so many. Does the States have that? Does it have like?
I mean, of course, right? But it's not as. I imagine in England too, if Northern England versus Southern England versus, there's all kinds of different things. The States is just so big. So people in the South have a thing. And the people in Montana have a thing. And the people in the Midwest, I mean, obviously there's tons of accents. And the one thing I remember from the States that is really statesy is people from the South will call like soda pop like Coke or 7-Up or any of that. They call it Coke.
Oh, got it.
So they'll say, you want a Coke? What kind of Coke you want? You want a root beer Coke? You want a Sprite Coke?
Yeah. Oh, really? So it's all Coke?
Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
It's all Coke. It's all Coke. But, then you got your Mountain Dew Coke. You got your Diet Coke Coke. Yeah. That's a trip, man.
Where's that from? Where did they do that?
That's South. That's maybe like the Carolinas. I'm speaking out of turn a little bit here, but I was in Mississippi. My grandmother lived in Mississippi for a while, and they did everything Coke. At least the people that I talked to there.
Lots of Coke, yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't want to. They're like, no, you don't have. And then it was just this crazy like. I was like, what are they talking about?
It's great,
but,
isn't it?
I'm sure there's tons of them. I need to think about it.
When I was working on the cruise ships, my first day on, I can remember like just meeting the crew and stuff, and they kept on asking me what's up, like, and I was like, what is this? Hey man, what's up? And I swear I was like, nothing. I'd never heard that term. Hey man, what's up?
Oh, just as like a hello.
Yeah, I thought they were saying like what's wrong or what's going on. Like I didn't know. I was
yeah.
It took me a few days to get used to that, and then my best. This is going down in flames. Is that I
love it.
I was next to the stage where we were playing, and in the daytime, and this American lady walked over to me, and she asked me where the washroom was. And I proceeded to tell her that we didn't have one of those. I was like, washroom? Yeah, we don't have one of those. And she was like,
great.
She was like, no, I really think you do. And I was like, washroom? I'm sure we haven't got one of those. I was like, what do you do there? And she was like, it's the toilet. I was like, oh, yeah, we definitely have one of those. Yeah, we got one.
Like, were you thinking, is the washroom the place where you're like, maybe you wash your pet, or you wash or like a specific room to wash an object?
Man, I just had no clue. Because like back then as well, I'm maybe like 21 at that time. Obviously there's it's just the world's so much more open now, isn't it? Instagram, we like all social media has just sort of like removed all of the barriers. So there's a lot more communication going across the board. Whereas then the only contact to Americanisms was through like films. The end.
Of course.
It was
the end.
Yeah, the end. There was no. I actually think the first time I met an American person, was on the cruise ship when I was 21. I don't think I'd ever met an American before. Oh, maybe I had. I'll tell you who I met. Michael League. I think Mike League might have been...
No way!
Yeah, I think Mike League...
The first American you ever met was Michael League?
Yeah.
That's outrageous. That's outrageous, dude.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Wow.
I just never met any Americans, because I just came from nowhere and then moved down to Leeds pretty...
Yeah.
It could have actually, and maybe I went on the ships before. No, I'm lying. I didn't meet Mike first. I met Mike after that, but it was very close after that. But yeah, I worked on the cruise ship.
He was your second American.
He was my second American, yeah. He actually came, I think he was studying in Leeds at one point. He was doing some kind of exchange program with Leeds. He was in North Texas, in Texas State University. And there was some kind of exchange program going on. My friend, great keys player, who plays in Snarky Puppy, called Bill Lawrence. So Bill was at Leeds Uni. I was just floating around Leeds playing, and so you knew Bill from playing, and then Mike came over on some kind of university exchange thing. Then Bill Lawrence went out to, this was before Snarky Puppy, he went out to North Texas, to Texas State, for like a month or something like that. And through that relationship emerged, Snarky Puppy, and then and then it blew up, and then wow, just amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great, isn't it? Like, what a great story. I love that that band for me was like that first homegrown. There wasn't a label. They just used YouTube to capitalize on the exposure and drive that exposure themselves. And it was just, and off the back of that, when I think of like Wolfpack, the band really that did that before them for me was Snarky Puppy. At least for me, I'm sure there's a lot of other bands that have done similar, but just in my little area of what I could see at the time, that was, they were the bands that were doing it.
I agree with that too. I remember seeing them and finding them on YouTube and just being blown away at the size of the band. I mean, I have devoured everything that I can find of his on YouTube, just interviews, anything. I, of course, watch the Mentor stuff on SBL
he was doing that
too. I mean, just delightful and so just smart. And I mean, always surrounding himself with great people. That's the thing about League, man. Like, is a really good gauge, I think, for surrounding himself with great people, musicians. I mean, whoever mixed that stuff, I mean, the mix of that stuff had to have been difficult, to get that stuff to sound so lovely. I mean, that's no easy feat. Just that alone. Think like, man, kudos.
It was
cool.
It was insane, wasn't it? I think I've got it here.
Yeah.
It was recorded. It was recorded at Shapeshifter Lab, 2012.
Well,
it jumped into my mind because obviously Matt Garrison, he owns Shapeshifter, right? He was the guy that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay.
So Matt is the guy who founded, if that's the right word for it, I'm not sure, but he was the guy that founded Shapeshifter Lab in Brooklyn, isn't it? And I was speaking to him a couple of days ago, and they've got, I'm not sure, I think they're having to move out or something like that. So they're having to do some kind of, they're doing something with Federa. They're doing some kind of like celebration thing with Federa, but I'm not sure it's connected with the Shapeshifter Lab and the close of that. They're trying to relocate or something like that. Like, I've got fingers crossed, obviously, that they keep that place because it's amazing. It looks amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah. It looked amazing. Yeah. I've never been.
I've never been. I've never been. I really want to get Matt Garrison to do something with us, actually, because he's God, what a player. What a dude.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, what a dude.
What a dude, totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
On that note of Michael League, let's sort of segue into endorsements, because when you were talking about, it's obviously the topic of this podcast. We like 10 minutes ago we were like, well, maybe not 10 minutes, but 10 minutes before we went live, what should we talk about this week? Endorsements. And Mike actually he's never taken any endorsements, has he? As far as I know, he's always he's a P bass guy, and he's got like an F bass, I think, and a few other basses. But from what I can see, he's definitely not endorsed by any bass brands. And I think that
I feel like though he has a Mark bass thing.
He has got.
I feel like they designed, doesn't he?
I think he does. Yeah.
I mean, there's that, and there's also LK straps. They make all straps for him. But I don't. Yeah, basses. I think he loves the old Fender P basses so much that at least that's what it seems like. That maybe he doesn't have a specific deal. Although, boy, a Michael League signature custom shop precision bass.
Yeah, Fender. Why have you not got a Michael League signature custom? Why? They should, shouldn't they? Yeah,
I know they should.
Maybe they don't know they should. They absolutely should, though. That'd be made by Vince
for sure.
Made by Vince Van Trigg.
So great. And doing his, like, copying his 57, that, or maybe it's a 59, but it's that 59, like two-tone verse. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
wouldn't that be like?
Yeah, it'd be so
because
good.
I don't feel like there's a custom shop version of that color pickguard.
There isn't
vibe.
If anybody's wondering who I mentioned, Vincent Van Trigg there, Trigt. He's a master builder in the Fender custom shop, and all of the basses that he makes are they just look insane. I've kind of banned myself from going on his Instagram account because it's a pathway to doom. You know what I mean? I'm just sort of like keeping out of there.
I know.
He's so good. But yeah, like, how do you feel about endorsements in general?
I have recently started to be approached by companies to do things. And for the longest time, I thought that, I should be approaching companies and I mean, this is so embarrassing. But before I was really active on Instagram, I would say, I'm going to go on tour with this artist and here are all the dates I'm going to play.
Got it.
And you should send me this gear because I'll talk about it after the shows with people, and just like you say, just tumbleweeds, man, just nothing, I'm sorry, Mr. Allison, but we are not accepting new,
Yeah.
And I will say this, if you want interaction with companies that make gear, if that's part of what you like, go on Instagram, use the stuff you use, and start tagging them in posts that you do, and they will start coming to you. I've had a lot of varying experiences, some incredibly positive and some not so positive, with brands, people in that sphere. And I mean, I'm just learning how to navigate that stuff. I will say this though, Umbrella, it's not about the gear, it's about PR. In fact, this entire industry is not really about music. You know what it's about? Public relations. This is about people. It's about relationship. This whole game.
Dude, I want you to teach me about this because I think that you're kind of like really dialed into it. Honestly, and just in total transparency, I'm just going to read it actually. So you messaged me before and you were like, let me just find it here.
Oh, yeah.
You were like, I was like, you said, how about like talk about endorsements? And I was like, wow, wicked, that'd be great. And then you said, love it. So I'm reading your message now. I said, love it. I need your advice big time. And then I go on and I'm like, I'm the worst at endorsements. I'm the worst. So I'm kind of like, I've got my own. I can tell you how I feel about it, and I will obviously. Of course I will.
Yeah. Of course.
But I'm definitely, I think I'm not sure I'm thinking about it right. Honestly, I think that I'm kind of just, and maybe I am, maybe I'm thinking about it correctly, but maybe I'm not thinking about it correctly. When you said it's about PR, like unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
What does that mean?
So it means that it's not just about the thing that you're going to get or the thing that you're going to give in terms of, like, say a company approaches you and they want to work with you doing some product demos. I think I used to have this thought of like, okay, if I don't use something every single day, I don't want to rep another product because I think that's going to be disingenuous. But then the more I thought about it, but I mean, I do a thing, but I also love a lot of things. And what if I get this pedal, this instrument, this amp, this set of strings, and feel like, I don't know that this is necessarily going to be perfect for what I do every day, but I know who will like this? I think I have an idea of who will like this. And what if I speak about it very honestly from that perspective and say, okay, if you're this type of player, this instrument is for you. Like I started to do some work for Spectre, and I have an NS2. If you're here, check this out.
Oh, it sounds killer, yeah.
This bass I bought and paid for with my own money. I love it very much, but I don't use it all the time. I use this on sessions when it needs to be like that bright 80s vibe, like with chorus. Then it is perfect. So that's how I come into relationships with companies. First of all, I will only work with a company if I like the people. That's a big, big, big deal. I want to know that the people are passionate about what they're doing. They need to be smart. They need to have a sense of humor. They need to be into it.
So they need to be culturally aligned with you.
Yes, I think so.
Like, from a hang type of like, you feel good about who they are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all of the people that I work with, so, I've started to work with Dunlop, and Daryl Anders is incredible. And
awesome,
we chat on the phone all the time. And yeah, man. And the guys from Justin and Ryan from Trickfish too, will get on the phone with them. And I mean, Jeff and everybody at Spectre. Awesome. Now all of these things are not products that I necessarily use every single day of my life, right? But they are products that I know who would maybe want to use them, right? So I talk about it from that angle. And being a part of those conversations and being a part of that work has then led to other things, talking to other people, getting in relationship with other companies and people that I love as well. So yeah, I think in the beginning I was like, oh, if I talk about it and I don't use a Spectre every single day, then that's going to be disingenuous. But I use a lot of different stuff depending on the project, So that's kind of how I see it. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And what do you think the benefit is of being, because I'm sure that there's people listening, bass players who are, up and coming or pros or whatever, and they're thinking, and they maybe have this dream of being endorsed by a company. Like, what do you think the benefit for the artist is?
I think the benefit for the artist is expanding the umbrella of the people that you know. And the more people that you know, the more opportunities you have. So if you ever, and specifically in that market. Now, if you're not a gear person or you like this may not be exciting, but for instance, I have always wanted to go to the NAMM show. I've never been, which is ridiculous.
I've never been.
We gotta go.
Yeah, no. It'd be so messy. Go. We might end up. We'll end up on sort of like a boat. I mean, we'll wake up like massive hangover.
What happened?
How did we end up on a boat? Why are we in Mexico?
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, but I mean, like doing something for a company that you believe in, products that you believe in, people that you believe in, just it can lead to other things. So, for instance, I would love to do NAMM and help a company that I love rep a product, or because I just want that experience. And I've made content that I never would have made before because of getting in touch with these other companies, and then I've been put in touch with gigs, other opportunities via these people. So it's not about the strings, the amp, the bass.
It's not about getting the free gear. Yeah.
It's not about getting, although in the beginning I thought it was. In the beginning I thought, oh yeah, getting free gear is going to be cool. But it's not free. It's not free.
It's not free.
And you can't think about it that way, right? Like, because you have to think about what can I do of value for this company. So the companies that I have really believed in and that I have approached, like for instance, one of them is Origin. They make a compressor that I love.
Oh yeah.
And I just approached them and said, I love your product. Whatever. Like, I'll do whatever because I love you guys. And then that's led to doing some really fun things. They've sent me some things to test. I've done some Instagram lives talking about compression. But that has been a thing where, like, this is something I use every single day. That said, I think maybe I'm on their website, but I don't care. I don't care, like, oh, I've got my picture on somebody's website. Like, I just want to be working with cool people and doing cool stuff. That's it.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that it did used to be about getting on the website. I think that where I struggle with, like, how to kind of think or feel conceptually about endorsements is it's changed so much from what it used to be. So I think if we dial the clock back to when it was only magazines, right? Let's think about, like, why Elaine Caron, why Gary Willis, why those guys and I'm not taking anything away from their playing, right? But who endorsed you as an artist? Who endorsed you could kind of make or break you in terms of like
it was like a label.
It was like a label, yeah. So Gary Willis was endorsed by Ibanez and Eden Amplification, and that means that they slapped his picture on the back of all of the magazines, and that had a huge impact on his visibility, because that was the only visibility. He wasn't going to take out ads himself and put himself on the back of Bass Player magazine, Of
course.
So he ended up on those ads, and that means that we found out about guys like Gary Willis, about guys like Alain Caron. Now, Alain Caron was obviously and also endorsed by David Eden Amplification, and I think that in that era, I think obviously the artists got they got free gear, which is definitely not bad. Getting free gear, come on, it's
of course, for sure. It's amazing.
It's pretty cool. But I think the big deal back then was that they were going to get pushed by the brand as as a figurehead for that company. And I think that as the landscape has changed, that has completely been diluted down. I think that
I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's, I'm not sure, I don't know how much hangover there has been since. So a lot of musicians might have that, they still might have that old school, especially if they're our age, they'll have that old school mentality in terms of they'll remember, like the reason I know who Gary Willis was because of the adverts that I saw him through those brands. The reason why I know about Stu Ham, same thing, all of these guys.
Yes.
So there's almost this weird, and hangovers are not, but there's this kind of like, it's a lagging kind of, the lagging landscape that used to be, that doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of been dissipated down. It's not really, if you now are endorsed by, let's say, Ibanez, well, nobody's really reading the magazines anymore, and they're probably not going to put their advertisement dollars behind you and put you on the back of Bass Player magazine anymore, because that landscape's just totally changed. So it doesn't exist. So as that, and I saw that happening as I was getting into YouTube, I saw that happening, and it kind of, because I was like, yeah, it's going to be cool to be endorsed by somebody. I played overwater basses, which was really cool. Obviously,
I know you have a signature overwater bass,
and I made them as well. Yeah. I didn't actually make those basses, but that's the only signature bass I've ever had, because Chris is one of my best friends, and why not? They're awesome instruments, okay? Right. But then when I started getting, I suppose, people coming up and saying, "Hey, do you want to play our basses, or do you want to play the amps?" Something like that. I'm
so curious how you navigated it.
I just honestly, I didn't navigate it. I was just like, you know what? I'd rather, here's the honest answer. I'd rather buy the bass and be free of feeling like I need to do anything for the company. The end.
You don't want to be beholden.
I don't want to feel like I need to push their product or whatever. I just want to feel great about the instrument I play. And if I'm going to talk about it, I'll talk about it. And that's just, and I see maybe the endorsement thing as maybe a little bit of a time suck in terms of my focus. And I'm not sure there's a huge benefit to it, And
especially for where you are now, because guess what? You are where the attention is in bass world. Yeah. You're a large part of the attention.
Even back even when I was starting, it was kind of the same. It's kind of the same.
Well, yes, but I mean, players like me, players like Jonathan Marin, players like Rich Brown, all have we have been endorsed in a way by you. Think about this. Ooh. Like, you are now in a position to where if you put someone on your Instagram page, they get 500 followers in the course of a day. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So now the tables have turned, Scott Devine.
Don't do that. I've never even thought about that. That's really interesting, isn't it?
You're kidding me. You haven't thought about that?
I've never thought about that.
You are a tastemaker.
I've never thought about that.
And people know that. I mean, dude, I just watched an episode of Rich Brown's YouTube thing.
I'm loving it
this morning, where he's talking about it's so cool. It's called the Brownstone.
Yeah.
And he was doing this metronome exercise, and he said at the very beginning of it, "Hey, thank you so much for checking out this channel. It's growing. I appreciate it. I know that so many of you are here from SBL. And I have a huge debt of gratitude that I need to pay Scott. And thank you so much for checking me out there." And so.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, something that like, this thing, we're talking about endorsements, but we could also, you brought the word up, and I think it's really right, is attention, right? With the magazines before, there was all of this attention on brands. Those huge full-page ads on the back of Bass Player magazine. You flip it over, it's ADA. ADA had Les Claypool and Victor Wooten forever.
Yeah.
Forever. Flea on the GK one.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that stuff, and you saw those faces every day. You saw those photos. You saw, well, now where is the attention? Of course, it's on social media. What are the big channels? I mean, you're not the only big channel, but you are one of.
Yeah, it's definitely one
the
of,
only.
Yeah.
Big channels.
Yeah.
And when you put someone on, it is similar to when GK ran that ad with Flea.
Kind of blow my mind a bit. I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're right. I guess you are right. Yeah. Oh man.
I mean,
yeah.
Here's another really interesting thing. When I did that first SBL takeover on Instagram, remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a while ago now. But I was under. I asked then Pablo, who runs the SBL Instagram account, hey, how did it do? Like, I had this naive, and this is very recent. I mean, this is sort of embarrassing to admit, but this is true. I said to Pablo, hey, how did that do? Thinking that I was providing, thinking in my naivety that I was providing some value to SBL by doing all of that content. And he sort of said to me, I said, how did that do for SBL? And he said, fine. And then he goes, how'd it do for you? And I said, really good. So make no mistake, Scott Devine, you are the record label.
I do think that you bring massive value, though. I really do. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But like, you have a platform of people that trust you, and the people that you put on, are then embraced. And you make very conscious decisions about that. I know, and we've talked about this, like, of who you think you want to feature.
Yeah.
That is not an accident for you, right?
Yeah.
And so you are now, sir, you've become the endorser.
Am I David Eden amplification from David Eden amplification from yesteryear? That's so interesting, isn't it? I can definitely so here I suppose that if I was to reach out to somebody, let's say, and say, hey, we'd love to have you on hey, George, you okay there? If anybody can hear shaking in the background, it's George down here. He was like, is it dinner time? But
George.
If I'd sort of said to somebody, hey, do you want to get featured on the Instagram channel? I definitely think that it's going to have a great, effect in terms of sort of like exposure for those guys. And
yes.
Yeah, and the way that, if anybody's wondering as well, the way that I kind of think about who we feature on the channel is just anybody that's doing just like awesome stuff that needs to be, that the world needs to know about. The end. Like, that's it, really. I'm just sort of like sometimes I'll be listening, I'll be on Instagram. I'm just like, this guy's great. So I message Pablo and be like, we should put this guy on. He's great. That's it. So I definitely see there's a benefit for that. What about if just getting back to that endorsement thing as well, like what happens if you are endorsed? Like, do you think there's any, is somebody listening, a bass player, are they going to get any followers if they are endorsed by, do you know, sort of like how it used to be? So
Yeah.
If Ibanez was behind you, you're going to get put on the magazines. You're going to get followers, not on Instagram, right. Not on Facebook. You are going to get exposure. Nowadays, though, if that happens, if whoever endorses you, is the same thing going to happen or not?
No. I mean, there are a few, of course, you know this, right? There are a few monsters that if you get endorsements or you get big signature models, that then has an impact. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to Sean Hurley about getting his own custom shop bass, that's rad. That's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it comes then with the cachet of having that. I'm sure there's money involved as well. Pino's bass, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that then you get, Pino gets a cut of, because of his name leverage, he gets then a cut of all of those instruments that are sold. But I just don't think about it that way at all. I think about more my whole trajectory as a musician, and my career has been, how can I bring you value? Not what can company do, what can company X do for me, what can artist X do for me, but how can I, so when I approached Spectre, I was very honest and said, I don't play my Spectre all the time, but I love it. And I love that it's one of the first boutique brands, started in Brooklyn in the 70s. I love that about it. It's like one of the OGs. I love that, that the dude from that MCA used it with the Beastie Boys. And I came to them and said, is there anything I can just help with? Right. Yeah. And so it became an organic thing. Now then, if there are people that want to send me stuff, I try to be really upfront and clear about what are you looking for? I just want to make sure that I'm not letting someone down, and also that I'm not being let down, right? Yeah. I just want to make sure that they're happy, and that I'm happy and can do what they ask of me to do. But the thing, I won't rep stuff that I think sucks.
Yeah. I think you've got it dialed in, man. I think you've got it dialed in, especially what you were saying about the Spectre thing earlier, in that you love that instrument. It's perfect for certain sessions that you're going to be doing. You're not saying, hey, this is the bass I play all the time. Right. Because of that angle, I think it works great. I think it works really well for me, yeah. And if Spectre approached me and said, hey, we'd love to build you the Ian Allison bass and we want you to play it all the time, I would say, I can't do, that's not who I am. Yeah. That's who Wimbish is, right? That's who Doug Wimbish is. And he's playing that thing all the time and he loves it. And he was playing it in Cameo back in the 70s, right? That's here. For me, it's one of the tools. Yeah. Not saying that there isn't a brand or something that if they I would, oh my God. I have always. Yeah, Allison and Divine Fender custom shop models. Come on, Fender. Dude, we're ready.
Are you kidding me? I have dreamed about helping design a jazz bass. I have dreamed about putting aspects of 60s and 70s jazz basses together to make the ultimate jazz bass. What
would it be? Give it to me.
Well, and this is just for me. Now, not everybody. I started out playing a late 70s jazz. I think the late 70s jazz neck profile and neck finish is the best neck profile and neck finish of all time. It's a thin nut, but it's fairly chunky front to back. Yeah. And it also has sort of this glassy, slick poly finish, which is not hip, right? The nitro finish is the finish everybody's talking about.
You like the glassy finish,
Oh my God, it feels slippery. It feels like there's always some kind of butter on it. I think it's incredible. I would do a compound radius in the beginning, 7.25 vintage, but that started to flatten out by the end so that you could still have bendability and low action up top.
Yeah.
I would go 60s spacing though.
Ooh.
So because I like the bridge pickup a little warmer in the 60s position versus the 70s position.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I would go slightly underwound pickups because I think they sound bigger overall. I think overwound pickups tend to sound hotter and more kind of like they kind of sound like this.
Yeah, they've got that
versus
thing going on, haven't they? Yeah, cut through in the mix.
I mean, I have it all. I have the whole thing planned.
Is it gonna be Vince? Is Vince gonna make it?
Oh my God! And it would be Antigua.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Is your actual Antigua? Is it as heavy as the Sun?
Yeah. It's here. It's
I've played a few of them, and they're
probably
generally heavy as the Sun. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
so nice.
It's probably 11 pounds. But dude, okay, here's one other thing. A misnomer, I think, about weight in instruments is that everyone wants a light bass. Well, I've found that in jazz basses and P basses, I don't know if you found this to be the case, but when they're super light, they headstock dive so badly. And I find that then I'm cradling the neck all night, and then this shoulder is getting weird. Yeah. I like a bass to be between 9 and 10 pounds, personally.
Yeah. Oh.
So this would be the custom shop bass that would never sell.
It would honestly, I think it would sell crap loads. I think the Fender are pretty dialed into it. I think that they're going to be more dialed into it in the future. I think that the more, they're going to sort of like obviously they've cottoned on to the influencer thing, and they're doing a great job of it. Actually, like I'm a big fan of checking out people's marketing and what they do online. And I think over the last 5 or 6 years, they've done a great job. Since the new CEO, Andy Mooney, took over, he's done a great job of kind of steering that company in a slightly different direction. And like I had a weird kind of, I met Andy Mooney on Zoom. We had a Zoom call. It was bonkers. What a weird thing to happen. It was cool. It was quite
incredible.
It was quite intimidating. And he's actually got a fantastic story. So Andy Mooney, the CEO of Fender, right, which is a monster company in terms of the size of it and the revenue. Like, it's just bonkers, right?
Huge.
And it's the biggest, right? It's the biggest of all of the music brands.
It's the biggest.
Probably by a country mile, but that's an English term, by the way. It means
I get it. I love it.
Yeah. And,
yeah, it does.
So it was just got this email from one of the members of SBL, and they were doing something for Fender, like high up within Fender. And this is before Fender had released Fender Play, which is their online learning platform. Yes. And he just did like an intro email between me and Andy Mooney. And he was like, "Oh, Scott, this is Andy Mooney. You guys should get together. Andy's Fender are going to start this online learning site." And I was like, "Yeah, cool. This sounds great," you know. And so then Andy's assistant got involved in the email conversation. She was like, "Hey, let's set up a call, yada, yada, yada."
Yeah.
And then we jumped on this Zoom call. It was really, really funny, actually. When the Zoom call started, there was this like massive, big sort of like conference desk. So my head must have been on the wall. And like Andy was sat right at the end of it, and I can remember him kind of
way down.
Yeah, way down. It was like that scene in one of the Batmans where it's like Kim Basinger is at one end, and like who's the guy?
It's outrageous, dude.
And Bruce is at the other end of the table. But anyway. But thankfully, he was just getting his stuff, and he picked up his stuff and then came closer because I was thinking this might be a weird conversation. And he was fantastic. He was really dialed in, actually. He was really dialed in. He's super smart. But the guy, he's actually Scottish. So he was born in Scotland. Oh, it's a great story, this. He was born in Scotland, I think just outside Glasgow or just in between Glasgow and Edinburgh. Came down, I think he might have studied around Leeds at some point. But anyway, he ended up as I think he was his financial director in his 20s of a sports company, a small sports company just outside Leeds, right? And that company was acquired by Nike. And then
wow.
Andy then goes on to become one of like one of the top dudes at Nike. And then
the Nike guys.
Yeah. Yep. Then he goes to Disney, and he's like, Andy's the guy who created the Disney Princess, that whole Disney Princess brand. That was kind of his thing.
Wow.
He then went on to Quicksilver, CEO of Quicksilver, and then after Quicksilver, he then went on to Fender. Bonkers, right? Bonkers. But yes, like he must have been going through his career like a freight train to go from, working just outside of Leeds to CEO of Fender. And I think he's maybe in his mid-50s, maybe late 50s. He just must have blitzed
I'm sure you can't disclose the details of that call, but what can you tell us? What was the nature,
he was just
the perspective of that call?
He was just really open about it. He was like, we're going to start this. He was super transparent. He was like, I know you've got your thing going on. We're going to create a Fender, Fender version of online learning. Just wanted to know, have an open conversation about it. And I could have been like, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to be secretive and yada, yada, yada. All of this stuff is available to anybody now. If you want to know how people are marketing themselves, just go online and look at their website. Yeah, you can figure it out.
Type it into Google.
Yeah, you type it into Google, you can figure it out. So yes, I just had this open conversation with him about, what we were doing and how we were growing and stuff like that. And it was like we spent maybe like an hour, maybe 90 minutes on the call. He was really great.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really cool, actually. Really, really cool. So Andy, come on, signature Divine Bait.
Yeah, Andy. Divine just gave you all the secrets to make Fender play awesome. Yeah! It's time for those SIG models. Scott, what's your signature? I mean, let me ask you this. What would it take for you to feel good about an endorsement?
There'd have to be sort of like it would have the relationship, the value on both sides for me. And I'm just, don't read into this because it depends where you are, in your sort of like journey, right? If you'd asked me this sort of like 5 or 10 years ago, I would have been at a different place. But right now, it would have to be, so there's like equal value on both sides. And I can easily see that there's a reason to do it. So it definitely wouldn't have to be, hey, we want to do a Scott Divine signature and we're going to give you X percentage of sales. It wouldn't be that. That's not, in terms of when I'm talking about value, I'm not talking about monetary value. I'm kind of talking about just like value, like just positioning, relationship, all of that good stuff. So there would just have to be equal value on both sides and a reason for doing it. And obviously that would be the reason for doing it. So if Fender came knocking, I'd have to. I just have to. I just have to do it. They're the only company that I can honestly say that about. They're the only company where it would just be like, it's Fender. I can remember being in a guitar shop when I was a kid and looking at the Eric Clapton signature Strat, and it was about $1,000, and it was about $999 away from what I could afford.
Of course, yes.
It was like this, just and I used to watch all of the Clapton DVD or VHSs back in the day, and look at the signature Strat in the pewter, and it was so good. So if it was Fender, I'd consider it. But pretty much anybody else, I don't think. I'd probably rather just buy it and just have a great relationship. Somebody did send me a bass recently, and I did. I'm trying to figure out whether I should mention it. I probably shouldn't mention it because other people will be like, oh, they might send me a bass. But I really, really loved. I'll tell you what I loved. So this is for any companies listening out there, and it might sound bonkers for you to do this, but this is what I really loved. And they're one of the only companies that ever did this. They sent me the bass with zero ask.
Yes.
They sent me it and they were just like, hey, we made this for you. And I know that they love the basses that they make and stuff like, and all of that good stuff. And they sent it to me with zero ask. And I was like,
as a gift.
Yeah. It's just like,
with zero expectation.
Yeah, they know me. I've got like an Instagram relationship with some of their guys. I like all their posts. I culturally align with them. I've never met them in person, but I know that they could pass the beer test 10 times over. We'll be able to hang in a pub. It'd be great. And they just sent me it. And that was just even more proof of that. They just sent me with zero ask. And of course, I was just like, oh, this is the greatest. And then I played it, and I've been playing it in like Instagram posts and stuff like that. And all of
I think I know what it is. I won't say it.
Yeah.
But I think I know what it is.
I wish I could.
That's sick.
Yeah, I'd love to mention them, but I don't want anybody, like other players, thinking, oh, like maybe they'll hit me up with a free bass. And because I know that it costs, and they're not a huge company either. I mean, there's maybe like, I think in fact there's one guy who's building those basses. But it was just, they asked for they just didn't ask for anything. And that meant everything. I was like, that was huge, because so many people come with the ask that, and It then means that they're taking the risk on hoping that you love it. Yeah.
And then, because there's no strings attached to it, it's an organic relationship. Yeah. And if you love it, you will be seen with it. You'll post about it. You'll feel the gratitude of them giving it to you, and you will honestly want to give back in some way.
Yeah.
And it can be better than the terms of any deal that you struck, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes. As soon as anybody comes up with kind of like deals and stuff, I'm just like, oh, this just sounds like a lot of friction to me. Friction in terms of complication. Yep. And I'm at a place where I'm really trying to simplify everything. I'm trying to simplify my life. I'm trying to simplify what I do every day. I'm trying to simplify SBL. I'm trying to simplify everything, because I think that
you're a busy man.
I am busy, but even for the organization and everything we do, I'm just asking myself, like, how can we simplify everything? Because I just imagine like a car traveling down the freeway, and complication is all of the kind of streamlined things that you could bolt onto it. So like the simpler it is, the more streamlined it is, and the more creative you can be, the more things you can do, as long as you keep it simple. And I think I read something the other day. It was this, I can't remember. I think it was Chris Sacca that said it. It was something along the lines of simple is hard to create and easy to manage. Complexity is easy to create and hard to manage. It's
100%.
It's interesting, isn't it? That simplicity is actually really hard to create, but once you've got it, you're cruising down the freeway. Everything's all good. So
feels good.
So the thing, you might have seen it cropping up in SBL meetings and stuff recently, and you definitely will in the future, is this sort of like constant, well, how can we make that simpler? How can we actually make it simpler?
Can we simplify?
Always asking ourselves that question, how do we simplify? And we've actually been doing, you've seen it, like the core values and stuff like that of the company. And I actually added it last week, of one of the core values is simplicity. Yeah, simplicity. Just so we're all kind of on the same page in terms of, hey, we've got this great project, we want to do this, we want to do that, it's going to be awesome. How do we simplify it? Great thing happened this week, didn't it? With our conversation with Gustav and Eric and Giga, and we were talking about, what we could do from an educational perspective, how we can approach it. We could do this, we could do that, we could do that, and you came forward, and you were like, for me, it's like, how can we make it simple? The simplest, and I was like, that exactly.
Dude.
What everybody really, like, if you think about the customer, the student, the member, in what world do they want it to be more complex? They don't. They want it to be
nobody.
Stupid simple, especially now.
Yes.
Especially now, because it's so noisy. It's so noisy.
Yes, everything is at your fingertips at all times. How can I make it a simple choice?
Yeah.
I sometimes feel in those meetings like I'm the bumpkin that's like, guys, how can we?
It's hard,
guys,
isn't it?
How can we make it fun and simple?
We've got
I was like, oh God,
it's a beast sometimes, isn't it? Because it's we've got like a few guys on the team that are definitely, they did great at school. You know, when I was
test takers.
Yeah, they did great at school, and they've definitely got the academic side dialed in. So, and I'm definitely, you know, I think that we're very similar in that, like, you know, we're just sort of like, how do we make it more fun and cool?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It may be, you know, you talking about this made me think of one thing for maybe someone that's not at this, you know, maybe people listening who haven't built a monster company, right? And they're thinking like, but I just want, if I could just get a bass. If I could just get some strings. If I could just have a relationship with a company. If I'd love to design a pedal, I would. What is, from your perspective, the very first thing that they should do to reach out for those type of opportunities? What's the first thing they should do?
Yeah, this is great. So they should do exactly what, do you know that company I was talking about who sent me that bass, and I was just like blown away, and it was a bit, and it is amazing, by the way. And just on the, were you about to say what P bass would it be if I could have a P bass? Just let me answer that. Okay, in terms of signature bass, it would be I would love 44 mil nut, 44 wide nut, but thin front to back.
Thin. Yes, like the early C, like a blade,
like the early 60s. Like, I tried one once, it had a 20 mil, it was 20 mil front to back. That, for me, is the perfect net. So it's like actually really wide, but really thin. Yeah, I love that.
I love it.
Do you know why? I think it reminds me of the old Ibanez RG necks. Do you know, like, the RG guitars? Yeah, I think that's why the first custom shop Fender I played had that wide nut. I was like, feels like an Ibanez RG guitar. So yeah, it would definitely have that neck. Anyway, what should people do?
I love it.
What should people, they should be like, how do I add value to that company and they will see me?
I was hoping that's what you would say.
Yeah. How do I add value?
How do I add value?
So I'd probably buy the pedal or whatever, and I'd be making some cool Instagram videos, and I'd be talking about, you know, how I use it, and just adding value with no ask. So when they see you, they're like, this guy's awesome, or this girl's awesome, and they haven't contacted us. They're not, you know, there's no ask. And then also, you could get a little bit more strategic, and you could, even if I say strategic, it sounds sort of like a little black hat, you know, but if you really wanted to sort of really go for it, then I'd probably start commenting on their posts and stuff. And, you know, if you really wanted to go for it, but if you really love the gear anyway, you are going to be doing that anyway. So you don't really need to kind of like be too strategic about it. But yeah, just
that's exactly
adding value.
My path. Yes. And not thinking, we think about this thing of like, I'm endorsed. You have to flip that thinking. You have to endorse the company. If there's something that you're chasing, an opportunity,
that's it. You nailed it.
Artist.
You are endorsing the company.
You are endorsing them, not the other way around. So people that put all of that stuff in their Instagram bio, endorsed by all these amps, all these brands, all these things. It's the wrong way to think about it. You are endorsing. You are working for them, for an opportunity, for a relationship. I mean, I maybe have spoke about this on this podcast before, but I would love to speak about it again, and maybe I didn't. But do you remember how I approached you?
I think we did talk about this on the podcast. I think you just reached out. Yeah, go on.
I just said to you, I love what you do. I've been a fan forever. I've been watching your YouTube videos. Let me know if there's anything that you think I would be good at for you. Just let me know.
Yeah.
And I will do it for you for free, whenever, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That is exactly it. Yeah. You basically said how do I add value for you? How do I create value for you? It's definitely the way forward nowadays, isn't it? It's so easy to do that. It's so clear that is the path. You know, just try and make people's lives better.
Yes, that led to me being a contractor. Like you're not in a, here's the thing too, like if you add value to a company, typically good companies aren't going to take advantage of you. There's this thought of like, oh, well, I can't do anything for free. I think that's total bullshit, because I think if you actually do add value, a company is going to see that value and want to pay you or want to give you, some kind of compensation.
Yeah.
So for me too, you said, what if you were to do this? And I'm happy to pay you this. So it wasn't like, you weren't the company, the greedy company saying, good, now I'm going to take advantage of this person. That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
I think there's like a naive fear of that. You just need to say, I'm down. Where do you need me? I'll be a good hand wherever you put me. I'm down. Let's do it. What can I do?
Yeah,
and then if the answer is nothing, fine. Like no strings, no expectation, right? That's how I try to approach every single interaction. That's how I approach artists too. I'll sometimes just DM artists and say, I love your music. I'm good at X, Y, and Z. Can I do something for you?
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to.
That. Yeah.
Like, I don't need writing credit. I don't need a big day rate. And it always leads to other opportunities. It leads to money. It leads to relationship,
It's kind of like, it's kind of like that when we were talking about social media on one of the earlier episodes. It's kind of like that, isn't it? It's just, you got to get into the kind of, you've got to, remember we talked about you either inside the pub or you're outside the pub, and everybody inside the pub's having a great time. They're all adding value to each other, and they're all talking and chatting and liking each other's posts, and it's like all of this huge community is being built. And if you're too focused on what the outcome is, why I should have to, am I going to get paid? Am I going to get free gear? All of that stuff that kind of gets in the way. You end up on the outside the pub worrying about what you're going to get. Where you should just get in the pub, start kind of just adding value and being a part of that conversation, and then just good things will come from it. What happens has anybody, because of my stance on endorsements in that I kind of shy away from them just because I think that it's like I always feel a bit sort of like I don't want to get tied down or anything like that. And I think that I've, on that scale, I'm kind of like a 9, and but I don't think it comes to any. I think I can't really justify it. I think it's just a natural thing. It would definitely be cool if it came down. But so for anybody that is listening, though, if they do want to get into this, what happens if somebody comes to them like a company, and they're a little contract heavy, let's use that term. They're a little official. It's because I've never had that, because I've always shied away from it. I've never had somebody come at me and said, hey, we want you to play our amplification, but we only want you to play our amplification, and because of this we want this, that, and the other. I've never had that. So but I bet you it does exist. It must exist.
I'm sure it does,
because we'll have old school guys that, they're kind of like that.
Yes, I think all the interactions I've had so far have been far more loose, unless I'm being hired to do a job. Like I've done things where I've like made a video for someone, and it's been like, hey, will you make this video? We'll pay you this much money to make this video for our channel. And I really enjoy doing that. Yeah. So that's a job and that is very separate. That's then you're a contractor. Or, hey, will you play on my record? Right. Yeah. I'm a contractor. Yeah. But I think I have had a couple of situations where been like, hey, here are kind of the terms, and I have just said no.
Got it. Yeah.
Here's the thing. You can always just say no. Or you can say, like, I'm thinking about a particular company that had an idea that they thought was a really great idea, and I said, I'm not comfortable with that for X, Y, and Z, but I would be comfortable with this, right? There's always negotiation. And because it's just people. Like, you don't have to say, oh, okay, yes, because you're fearful. You can say, if you feel like you're in any kind of position of leverage and you don't feel like that would be the best scenario for you, you can just say, I'm not comfortable with that. What if we did something like this? And then they might say, oh, well, what if we, and then you may come up with something. The thing that I always tell people is, bottom line, if I like what they're doing, what they're making, who they are, I always say, bottom line is I'd love to do something.
Yeah.
But I can't be exclusive with one bass brand. At least how my career is right now, I'm not going to hide the fact that I play 12 different brands of bass. I'm not going to cover up the logo on a... Now, Fender made me that custom shop. You know?
Andy.
But that's just not a reality for me. And I think that's so silly. That's such a silly old school thing of like, oh, I'm playing this thing and I'm going to cover the logo with masking tape. That's preposterous.
Yeah.
Like that's not a world that I want to live in. It's just not it's not realistic for me.
Yeah. There are guys in that relationship, like for
I know that.
Yeah, because like, well, you know them, I know them. Like just recently, like we were doing something, and one of the artists couldn't use a bass on a video or something. I can't remember exactly the story, and I definitely can't mention who it was. But they couldn't use a bass because they had a particular relationship with another manufacturer.
Yes,
so, yeah.
Sure.
And it was a bigger
maybe for that artist. Yeah, maybe for that artist, the monetary thing, the contract was worth them not being in that sphere. I mean, I'm a hustler in terms of like session musician, contractor. So I'm doing things with all kinds of different brands because I need to play a Rickenbacker on this thing to get that Peter Hook vibe that the artist asked for.
Yeah. I'd have anxiety about it. If somebody was like, oh, you can only play one bass, I seriously would have anxiety. But, well, what am I supposed to do every night? I normally sit on reverb.com. What am I going to do now?
Oh, Scott, let me tell you one thing. Back in the mid 2000s, I was in this rock band called Down and Above, and we went to a summer NAMM show, and we were, we had a little bit of horsepower behind us. We had a little bit of buzz, right? And I will never forget, we got approached by BC Rich to be exclusive BC Rich band. That meant that I would have to ditch all my Fender stuff. The guitar player would have to ditch all his cool BC Fender and Gibson stuff. And we just stood there, and it felt like a cool opportunity. And they were like, oh, we can get you on this festival. We can do this. And we just stood there and we looked at those guitars, Scott. We looked at the wall, and there was this moment, like where the guitar player and I sort of like looked at each other and like, should we do it?
And then the singer's really happy. The singer's like high-fiving.
Let's do it. Yeah.
You're behind us.
We just like I looked at all those pointy basses, and we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
We didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because of the exclusivity. We said no.
Wow.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. There is one
who knows?
pointy bass that's cool, isn't it? What's that one pointy bass that's cool that a few of the guys in the kind of like late 70s, early 80s played?
Warlock?
It wasn't Warlock. It's was it BC
tell me.
Rich?
They made a thing called a bitch. They made a Warlock. I'm not sure. And they had some stuff that wasn't ridiculous looking, but we just it just felt like the ultimate sellout.
Got it. Yeah, it was a BC. It's the BC Rich Mockingbird. Do you know the vintage Mockingbird? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty badass.
Yeah. There was some cool cool players playing that stuff, but yeah, I'm with you, man. I couldn't have done it.
We just thought like this is too far. This is too much of a compromise. And that's that thing. It's like it's in your gut. Like if a company approaches you and you think, I don't know, then say no.
Yeah.
Or renegotiate the terms. It never has to be exclusive. You are like, if you're being approached, you have leverage. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're not being approached and you want to start working with someone, you have zero leverage. So what you have to give is your time and talent, right?
Yeah.
So that's that thing you're talking about of value. If you have no leverage, if you're not a name that people want to be associated with, you have to provide the value. And you need to be very self-aware of where you are in that zone.
Dude, right? You're teaching me. I need this. Honestly, I'm so scared of the endorsement thing. I'm so to the point where, we do these giveaways and stuff like that. Like, we don't negotiate these deals with brands or anything like that. I just buy the basses. And honestly...
Are you serious?
Yeah. I just buy the basses. The reason I buy the basses is because if I think to myself, oh no, we'd have to kind of like email like brands and negotiate, and I'm just like, oh, come on,
you just do it.
Simplify, dude.
Wow.
Simplify that. We just buy the basses.
That's pretty badass. Let me tell you, the first giveaway that I did on my Instagram channel, I was in a naive space, and I thought I'll approach 10 brands about getting product to give away, and one of them will say yes, and I'll do one giveaway. Guess what? They all said yes.
They all said yes.
Every single one. Yeah, you know why? Because it's free advertising.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me, Scott Devine? When you give away a Sire bass, do you know what incredible advertising that is for them?
Actually, I think Sire did give me... I bought some... I'm kind of so out of touch, man. I think we've bought some... we bought some Sires, but I think they did...
Yeah.
We have been given some Sires. But all of the... Do you know, like the vintage jazz basses and the...
Yeah.
Like I'm looking behind
I was
now.
wondering about that. It's incredible.
We've got a giveaway coming up. It probably will be out by the time this is... But we're doing like... We've got like a Joe Dart signature bass. That's actually... I bought that bass for me, but I've decided I'm just going to, you know, taking one for the team. I'm throwing myself on the song, giving that away.
This is one of the many reasons people love you, Scott Devine.
F-bass fretless. That is my fretless. I'm giving that away as well.
Oh my God.
The Yamaha 6-string TRB, actually. Yamaha did give us that, actually, which is really...
That's cool.
Shout out to Yamaha. We've got an F-bass. That I did actually buy from F-bass. So yeah, it's
incredible.
F-bass.
I mean, you know, and they're so cool.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, and I did a thing with Spectre where I made some content for them, and then I asked in the deal where we're negotiating the price and we're talking about the time frame and all that. I said one thing that I want to do is I want to keep one or two of these so that I can give them away.
Yeah.
And they were thrilled. They were thrilled to be able to do that. And for me, it just felt like a win-win. They would get the exposure to my fans who maybe weren't always aware, right? And I would also then get to give something. So, you know, I think doing giveaways is an amazing way to add value to a brand. Yeah. Like, you know, because then like I'll do a thing where I'll go live on Instagram and talk to someone from that company. I did that with John Dines from Origin, and it was so fun. People ask questions about compression, but that's something that I wanted to do anyway. Yeah. I mean, I was excited to do it. And so
I love your giveaways, man. They're awesome. Like I've never entered one. But I'm not sure I'd win.
Well, don't, because you're not going to win.
But I really
can you imagine? It was like, the winner, Scott Devine.
That'd be so amazing.
Wow, look at that.
I do. I love the giveaways, man. You've been doing some interviews as well. Or like conversation. You went with Jonathan Marin yesterday, didn't you? You had that conversation with John.
I missed it. That was just a thing where, you know, John put out an EP, and it is wonderful.
It blew my mind.
Wonderful.
It's great.
It's so good.
Oh.
And he's been doing this thing where every month we get on a Zoom call with a bunch of his friends, really, and feature a player. Last month we did it with Rich Brown. The month before that we did it with Amos Heller from Taylor Swift.
Got it.
And it's so fun. And sometimes John and I will kind of back and forth or share, the call with Amos, for instance. John couldn't be there, and so I ended up taking that one. So we've been sort of starting to work out this relationship in that regard. And I love him so much, and I discovered him through you. It was all you.
He's great.
He's so good.
What a great.
And I just said, dude, do you want to talk about your record sometime? That's something that I can give. I can give time. I can give a little bit of awareness. I always joke with people that whenever I, feature them or whatever, if I play on an artist track and put that up on Instagram, I said, I can guarantee you 3 bass followers. 3 new bass followers. Guaranteed. Don't know how long they'll stick with you. But I can guarantee at least 3, so it's just something that I feel like similarly, I feel like you have this thing about giving to the community. You see someone that the world needs to know about in your mind.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's really, really endearing. That's a really endearing quality about you that I feel like you've influenced in me. where I feel like when I
that's
see
why
something,
I saw you and I was like, the world needs to know about Ian. So I was like linking to your posts and stuff. And remember when you stopped posting and I like publicly told you off? I was like, Ian, where are you?
Dude, you said everyone go follow Ian right now. I woke up with like 468 new followers. I'm like, what the hell is happening? I had like 1,800 at the time. I was like, what? Like you almost doubled my. I was like, what is happening? So yeah, I mean, that level of goodwill, gratitude, empathy, it's so contagious. And so I have, in my small world on Instagram, compared to the SBL world, I have wanted to do the same. So the things that I love and the things that I believe in and the things that I think are truly wonderful, I want to give time. I want to give energy to that.
It's like we're endorsing each other, right?
Yes.
Just pulling it back to endorsements. It's like, it really is though, isn't it? It's like,
It absolutely is.
Like, with you and Jonathan Marin, for instance, it was exactly that. I'm just like, the world needs to know about these guys. And Rich Brown, like, I'm just having a bunch of guys like jump to mind now.
I know.
Like, I know. I really wish it kind of, without going down a conversation about record labels, I'm really kind of super frustrated at the minute this is one reason why I love Jonathan's album so much. Well, first of all, it's just an amazing EP, right? And I think that he is so freaking musical. He's so musical. It just crushes.
He really is.
God, it's so good. But I was just also really happy that he did it and he put it out, because I think that
I know.
I've said this, I've talked about it on Instagram before. There is, and going back to when we were talking about Gary Willis, sponsored by Ibanez, Alain Caron, sponsored by David Eden, there was this really clear reason why they wanted to be endorsed, because they were going to go on the magazines. Yes. Well, there was also a really clear reason why they had to produce albums. They had to produce albums because it was a critical part of how they made money. They needed to sell the albums and they needed to go on tour. And all of that has kind of just fallen away over the last few years. Not only because of COVID, because I think, like, I had a conversation with Gary Willis before COVID. We were having a pizza at Pizza Express. That sounds so weird saying that.
Oh, I love it.
Oh no, it's like, my word. Anyway, so we're like having a pizza, and I was like, Gary, when are you going to do another album? And he was like, I'm not going to do another album. And I was like, what? And he was like, why would I do one? He was like, there's no reason. And I was like, the penny dropped. I was like, oh, I get it. He was like, I make the album. He said, music's pretty much free now. So I was like, it's, nobody's going to buy it. Everybody's going to stream it, or it's going to go on Spotify, and people will, he'll get sort of like 20 cents for every sort of like 100,000 views or whatever it is, right? So there's no monetary reason. He said, it's going to cost him $15,000 to $20,000 to actually do the record. And he said, and then I need to tour. He said, the touring thing's was hard at the time. He said, it's just,
of course,
it's all of the dots aren't joining up. And I think that like, I do believe that, I suppose I believe in the system, in that it will work itself out. I think it will work itself out. We're just at this strange point in time between these two. There used to be this world and now there's this world. And it breaks my heart to know that, like, Rich Brown isn't releasing an album this year and didn't release one last year. And these great bass players. So when Jonathan Marin released that album, I was like, thank God. I was like, yes, somebody did it.
I know.
For no reason. I don't think there'll have been anything. He just wanted to do it. Maybe sort of like something creatively in him, wanted to kind of just get some stuff out. I don't know. Like, what did he say? You spoke to him yesterday. Did he mention why you made it?
I wish I could go back in time and ask him that question. We mostly talked about, like, how to think about writing from bass perspective.
Got it.
I was asking him more like, hey, if you're a bass player and you think I'm just a bass player, I only play low notes for other people, how can you start to think about yourself as a writer? How can you start to think about yourself as a composer? That's kind of that's the angle I went down. But that's a great question. I think he told me that he's not much of a transcriber. Like, he never did the thing where he learned all of the heads and all of the Jamerson lines and all of the McCartney lines. He would learn little bits and pieces, and immediately, he said, it would start to make him think about writing something. So he's had this songwriter brain. He's had a creative brain, it seems like, his entire life.
Got it.
And so I think he can't help it.
Got it.
Like,
Got it.
This is just the way he exudes music.
Yeah.
Versus someone who's into transcribing Ornette Coleman.
Yeah.
You know, like,
got it.
He's not that. And I think, you know, it's so dangerous, not dangerous, it's tempting to think about people in a genre like jazz as all the same. Oh, they're all like Marin, where they're all super creative and they're doing their own thing, or they're all like Evan Marion, where he's making a different kind of music and he's you know, all these people, of course, are different and motivated by different things.
Yeah. And
Jonathan's thing really is find a little piece of something that he loves and turn it then into his own thing. Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I gleaned from him. Yeah. And it was really, really cool. But you're talking about providing a platform for people to release music, aren't you?
That's some kind of idea, some kind of, I want to do something.
That's like endorsements in a whole new way, right?
I think it just needs it.
I know. I want to just say this. I want to push back on the Willis idea in just a moment, for a moment, because I happen to think that social media is wonderful, and I know that there are a lot of people out there that think it's ruining music. I happen to think that the limitations of social media are incredible. I have long wanted to make an album for Instagram that was just a bunch of 1-minute tracks that would play sequentially and embrace it instead of hate it, instead of be fearful and say, oh, no.
That's what I mean about it. That's what I mean about it sorting itself out. I know that it's going to sort itself out.
It is gonna.
Yeah. I just wish it'd do it sooner rather than later. You know, because I want loads. I want all the bass players. Do you know, like we're talking about Jonathan's record now? I want that. I want more of that for all of the bass players, for all of the musicians. Actually, frankly, you know, all of the musicians that are doing it. And I think that it will come. And I think that people should be doing albums. And I think that it's just really based on the like adding value to the community, to just a life. I mean, like music should always be flowing, right? And I'm not exactly sure.
I agree.
How the economics work. I'm not sure. That's the tricky bit.
Right.
That's what, like with the Gary Willis thing, like that's why he was thinking about the how it used to work. And I'm not saying he's old school or anything like that, but it just hasn't lined up for him yet in terms of, oh, there's this reason why, and I should do it now. And
for sure. And I love Gary Willis. All due respect to Gary Willis, it does not cost $15,000 to make a record anymore. Or it doesn't have to.
Yeah, it doesn't have to.
It does not have to. He doesn't have to spend that money to make a record. He would choose to. It has been in his trajectory and his path. That's what it costs. It's the budget record, and now he's just hiring all. Right. And of course, to make a record like Tribal Tech made in 1993, But there are ways to do it, and I think, you know, we're seeing now a lot of people making records in new ways, and I happen to think that that's exciting. It's different. Yes, it's changing. I just feel like if you're a creative person and you want to make music, there's a reason to do it, and you got to do it.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think that he will do another album, and I think that it will be, just knowing him, it will be really freaking great. Do you know what he is?
He's so good.
He's an alien though, but as a human, right? He is so cool as a guy in that, and so talented. It's brutal. He's so talented. He's obviously a really fantastic bass player, but he's also a killing videographer, like really great. And he's got the OCD thing going on. Same as I was talking about with me earlier. He turned up to this video shoot and he knew more about the gear than the videographers. Like Dan, who was on the shoot. He was like, oh no, I'm being schooled by Gary Willis. And he like knows, and his wife is like a glass sculptor, and Gary has done this beautiful videography of this like moving glass thing, like moving around, all the light shines. So he made the thing that it turns on. He made it. He was like, so he knows all of this sort of like weird shit about like engineering, and like he's just one of those dudes. He's because like he came up with the ramp thing, and obviously he fits all
right.
The ramps.
Oh, I know.
But then the tuning heads, the weird tuning heads. He came up with that whole
the wheels.
He came up with that concept. Like he's just got one of them brains. I'm telling you, somebody else that I've heard a similar story to that I actually haven't personally met is Mike Pope. Apparently Mike Pope.
Oh yeah.
He's like
sure.
And he's obviously great bass player, but he's obviously like a electrical engineer as well. Comes up with these like did all the Federa preamps.
Yeah, the preamp designs.
Did the Trickfish preamps.
Yes.
They were done by him. I can't remember who was telling me. Can you remember the Groove Shop?
I mean, I remember the name. Was that in the States or was that in the UK?
It was in the States. It was like a shop just outside of New York, the Groove Shop. They had some sort of like affiliation with MTD.
Okay.
I ended up there, and the guy, I can't remember the guy who used to run it. He was telling me about Mike Pope, and he was like, yeah, Mike Pope, he said he can play around giant steps. He can design you an amp or a preamp, and he can also take your engine apart in your car and put it back together again. He said he's just one of them guys, And I was like,
it was like the man that I wish I were, like I'm burning toast.
Yeah,
barely passing.
Yeah, absolutely. Those Trickfish amps are killer, though, right? They're just really fantastic.
Oh, they're so cool.
Them. Yeah,
they're so cool.
What's with the Noble
they make
thing?
Really good stuff.
Like, what's with the Noble? I've never tried Noble stuff out. What's that like?
Oh, really?
I've never tried any Noble stuff.
I mean, I'm a nerd, and I was on the internet one night, and I discovered this web page of a guy that made these cool, essentially like Vox AC30 style amps. And he also made this bass preamp, and it had tubes sticking out of it, and it looked cool. And so I messaged him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I mean, I just sort of started. He didn't have a ton out there. Jack Roan is his name.
Yeah,
and I was on tour with an artist named Jeremy Messersmith. We played in San Francisco, which is close to San Jose, which is where he lives. And he came out on the train and brought me a preamp and just said, take it and just see what you think. It's kind of the prototype. Wicked. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I don't know if it'll, like, maybe it'll be cool, whatever. And then when I got home, we already had something dialed in on the tour, so I didn't end up using it on the tour, which I think he was a little disappointed by that. But I got it home and I plugged in, and it was better than I thought it was going to be. And I'm real picky, and I have real distinct, I don't know, like, there's something I want to hear out of gear. I want to notice it. And I noticed it, and I went, oh, wow. And then it got me, but there were things about that first version that were not great. Like the tubes were sticking out, the transformer was wrapped in electrical tape sticking out of the thing, And there were just a few labeling issues even, just that were sort of unclear. And so I said, it's really, really cool. It sounds really cool. Are you thinking about making a version 2? And he said, yes. And I said, can I just give you some notes?
Amazing.
And he said, I would love that. And now I was one of several people that gave notes on this thing. Yeah. But the current black box, the current black rectangle, was a result of some collaboration with some folks that,
Amazing.
And the thing that's interesting, I will say this, I ended up doing then a couple of videos for him on the next tour that I came through with Eric Hutchinson. I went in the studio, did some stuff, talked about it, but it was because I really loved it. And then he ended up letting me have one of the units that I sort of helped him with.
Yeah, got it.
But he does not send those out for free. He's not one of the guys that's sending those out to every player.
No.
So so like most people paid for their Noble. I mean, he does not do, like, if anyone is, hey, do you do any kind of discount? He goes, I can maybe bump you up in the shipping line because he's 6 months out or whatever.
Yeah, because he's a one-man band, isn't he? Yeah.
He's a one-man band. Yeah, he is. He works out of his garage, and he has 2 kids and married, and, he's doing his thing, and that's how he wants it to be. Man. And then I helped him design his amp, too. He did a bass head.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah. Well, I didn't help him design it. I said, there's so many things out there that are tiny and that fit in your gig bag. But for me, I like things to look like a piece of gear. Yeah. I want it to be stately. There's nothing that looks more silly on a stage than a 112 with a tiny head on top that fits in your gig bag. Yeah. I'm touring, I want to have a 412 or an 810 or a 410 or something with a head on top of it. So I said, what if you made a beautiful head box, but then you picked it up and surprise, it was incredibly lightweight. So he made this thing, 1,000-watt head. It's 20 pounds, but it's in kind of a robust, big, cool wooden enclosure that he makes. It looks beautiful,
doesn't it? Yeah.
It is beautiful. And does it fill everybody's need? No. It wasn't a very... And it's expensive because he makes it all by hand. And he even discourages people from buying it because it's such a pain in the ass to make. But if you want to pay it is. If you want to pay the $2,000 for one, you can. I think he might still make you one. But I just love this idea that you pick up something and you're surprised. You think, oh, that's going to weigh 80 pounds like an SVT. And you pick it up and, oh my God, you could hold it with one hand. But it's not this. Yeah. So that said, it hasn't sold particularly well because he's not pushing it because they're hard to make. And also, people either seem to kind of want an SVT or they want the gig bag amp.
Got it.
There's not a lot of people that want the in-between, at least that we've discovered. So don't always listen to me, is the moral of that story. Man, it fits my needs perfectly.
I think there's room for it. I think there's room for stuff like that.
I love it.
I think there's room for anything that kind of like emulates that kind of like ampeggy, valvey thing. And his boutique-y. I just think there's, like a bunch of space for stuff like that. There's a few great makers, actually, that's coming up with stuff. Like, I've heard of Milkman.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I haven't played it, but it looks great.
Yeah.
Stuff looks great.
Like, I'd love to get my hands on some stuff like that, but yeah.
I mean, and also, Scott, isn't it about aesthetic? I think that when I saw Jack's products for Noble, I immediately were like, that looks great.
Yeah.
And if we're honest with ourselves, right? We all sort of gravitate to things that we think look cool.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's different for everybody. But man, there are some makers that make stuff that I'm sure it sounds great, but to me, it is so aesthetically unconsidered.
It's not what you're into. Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? I would never. I don't want to plug into that thing.
I'll tell you one of the best 4x10s, which is a great example of this. One of the best 4x10s I ever played through. And this
please.
Was a Hartkey 4x10 dual port.
Sure.
Man.
Yeah.
Like aesthetically, it's not really doing it for me, but
sure.
It felt great just playing through it. It just felt, it was moving air. I mean, it was big. Right. It was like 100 pounds or something. And it just moved air. There's something to be said about that, isn't there? Just like the way it kind of feels when you play it, the air that it moves just makes you play completely differently. The difference between, 1x12 with a small, head on top versus when you turn it and they've hired like an SVT, right? And you just know that the night's going to be better.
I know. And that every little thing you play will come roaring to life, right? And you're not like overplaying.
Every little ghost note just sort of like pats you on the back. Just sort of like a gentle hug on the back. It's so good.
Just the best.
If anybody's listening to this and you're like, what? You wait. You wait until it's you. Big, just like a 6 or an 8x10. It really is the best.
It is the best. Yeah, moving air is amazing.
Yeah, SVT, and when you go up on the G string or the D string, and it just it just has like a different thing, doesn't it? Right when like right up way above.
Those notes feel supported up top. They don't feel thin.
Yeah,
you know,
it still
you feel like there's like a low end content.
Yeah, there's loads of low end.
Yes.
When instead, I hate it when you go up top and it's like nothing.
All the low end is just gone, and you're like, oh,
yeah, it's sort of like a duck quacking. So
yeah.
But this did not work
so
out.
True.
Oh, dude, let's call it. We're like nearly 2 hours in. I think that one day we're going to do like a 3-hour episode. We should do
I love it, man.
That's why I love Rogan. Rogan does like 3-hour episodes. He's just explosion. And they're just so good. I just love listening.
They're so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I might have to ban myself from listening to them, actually. They're just... because they're quite addictive, aren't they? Because they're obviously...
They are.
He gets these great guests on that are really, really just... great to listen to. I say it to Lisa all the time. She's not a huge podcast listener, so she doesn't really understand it. But I'm just like, it's so great listening to interesting people. I could just listen to interesting people talk all the time.
So can I.
Yeah.
It's really calming for me too. Like I feel like how settled by it somehow. Yeah. Like it's bracing.
It's because I think that you are similar to me and probably similar to all of the podcast listeners that would, you know, self-identify as, yes, I love listening to interesting people speak. It's because you feel like you kind of just like it's opening your mind a little bit and you're learning a little bit more and finding out all of this fantastic, information, but also different angles on different information that you just didn't know. It's giving you different perspective. It's really great, isn't it? Oh.
It is. I listen to Corey puts out that podcast every week on Wednesdays. It comes out the Guang Notes. It's with Premier Guitar, or at least it was the first. I can't remember if it is this season or not, but it's so good. I learn something every single time, and he's had bass players on it and guitar, but even just a guitar player that I've never heard of. I listen because he's so thoughtful. His questions are so great.
Yeah,
he's such I'm learning a lot from him.
He's such a talented dude, isn't he?
He really is. Yeah.
Great bass player, great guitar player. Just and
freak.
Do you know the stuff that he released on YouTube? It's sort of like a show. What would you call it? It's
like the Corey and the Wong Notes. It's called.
Yeah, it's like for anybody that's not listening, how would you? You've got to go check it out. It's like It's kind of like an entertainment show, isn't it? Like wrapped up with music.
Like a variety show, yeah.
It's like a variety show.
If you're familiar, with the Carson show, or obviously, most recently Fallon, Seth Meyers.
Yeah, exactly.
But it reminds me, there was an old show from Nashville called the Porter Wagner Show. That was where Dolly Parton got her start, and it was about music. It was way more featuring the band. There was more music content. There's jokes kind of around music. It was like about guitar slingers. And Porter Wagner, the host, songwriter, and guitar player. And that's it. It kind of leans that direction where it's very much a variety show, but it is all about music.
Yeah.
And it's really.
I got to check it out before he released it on YouTube. He sent it over like a link so I could check it out.
Oh, cool.
Man, cool. I cannot tell you how blown away I was. I was like, what? Yeah. I'd never seen that. He just gets it. It's so good. And the delivery of it, it's like the delivery of it is just insane. It's just like the production's insane, the quality. Do you know what it reminded me of?
And it's funny.
What's that YouTube show that Dave King did like a few years
Rational Funk.
It reminded me of Rational Funk, but with like a lot more production around it and obviously Corey's thing going on. But it was that similar... man, I love Dave
Scott, King. I love that you know Rational Funk.
Oh,
I love
dude. Do you know, I said this out loud. Yesterday. I was on YouTube, just like clicking around, and then I saw a thumbnail, and it was a guitar player that I like, and I looked at and it said like published 3 days ago, and I was like, 3 days ago, and then I squinted, and Dave King was in the background, and I said this out loud. I was like, Dave King's on it, I'm watching it. I just clicked it. I said, if Dave King's on it, I click it. And I just clicked it.
Yeah, man, that is great.
He's so cool.
That is so great.
Yeah, Rational Funk.
He's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be a really fun guest. He is a lovely guy, funny, a Minneapolis institution. You know he's from Minneapolis?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of why I love Minneapolis. I think it's the Prince thing, but then I love it because of the art scene there as well. There's obviously
all kinds
this really
of stuff.
Fantastic art scene, yeah.
Yeah,
Dave's
really
so
is.
good, man. Dave's been doing these Instagram videos. Have you seen them with his mum recently?
Of course,
It's so good. It's so good. She's just like,
they're so great.
What are you talking about, Dave? You know, it's so great. Oh,
you know, Dave has some brothers. Dave has, I believe, 3 brothers, 2 of which are twins. And one of the twins, his name is Kevin King. And Kevin looks a lot like Dave and is as talented as Dave is at drums, but at like interior build out, home reno design. Wow. And he did our bathroom.
Get out!
To like redesign, yeah. And so Kevin King is just so funny because Kevin King shows up to your door, and instead of a cymbal bag and sticks, he's got the tool belt, you know, like hammers, and you know, and so I don't know Dave that well. We've chatted at gigs and stuff. He's older than I am, and we just aren't in the same music scene.
Yeah,
but his family is legendary and wonderful, and his brother Kevin is amazing.
Oh, amazing! If anybody wants to check out Dave, you should definitely check out him on Instagram. He's got an old YouTube show that he did maybe like 6 years ago called Rational Funk. It's like a comedy thing. You might watch it and you might think, dudes, what were you talking about? You kind of got to be dialed into that kind of humor to appreciate it.
It's very dry.
Yeah, super dry, yeah.
And it's hard to know. The thing that I love about it is it straddles this line. To me, it's both, it's comedy and it's inspiration. It's very dark, like sardonic humor.
Yeah.
That is self-aware, but also there's some real nuggets of incredible music lesson, life lesson in it, but it sort of makes fun of even the sincerity of itself.
Yeah.
It's very meta. It's very Dave King, and it's a treat. You should definitely check it out.
Yeah, and check out his band. You know, he's in the Bad Plus still, right? Like obviously
in the Bad Plus, a band called Happy Apple. There's another incredible Minneapolis band called Halloween Alaska that if you haven't checked out, like Scott, if you've never checked out Halloween Alaska, it's some of Dave King's like pop drumming.
Halloween.
Like you'll think like, oh, is this all drum machine? But it's Dave King playing like a mix of electronic and acoustic elements.
Really?
Halloween, Alaska. It is remarkable.
Oh, I'm on it. Oh, wow, yeah.
Halloween, That's Alaska. One of my very favorite projects that he's ever been a part of, actually. Very cool.
I'm going to check it out after this. Right, dudes, we're going to call it. Obviously,
all right.
If you're listening on all of the places, go, leave us a review, share it with any muso friends that might want to listen to two bass dads chilling out and talking about bass and
That's right.
and everything else that it encompasses. Anyway, dudes, take it easy, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye-bye.